Let me just start off this week's edition of the NFL Rearview Mirror Show by telling you something that you probably know, but you don't want to admit. But the bottom line is this. I think most gamblers are hardwired to gravitate toward the favorites. It's just basic human instinct. We always lean toward the chalks. Now, there are some contrarians out there who will say, hey, always got to bet the underdogs, always bet the underdogs. And they're the guys that generally you'll hear every time one of the dog cashes. You'll never hear that they go 1-3 betting 4 underdogs. You only hear about the one dog that barks for them. You'll never hear about the 3 losers that they have to absorb as well. But reality is, most times, most gamblers lean toward the favorites. And at the end of the year, you're generally going to find the favorites and the underdogs, they're going to be right around 50-50. But there are going to be some weeks in the NFL where the favorites just get their asses kicked. And when the underdogs bark big time, 2 things happen. Neither one of them are good generally for gamblers. 1, gamblers are losing their shirts. 2, sports books are making a fortune because we go back to my general premise. Most gamblers are hardwired to bet the favorites. And that's what we had this weekend. Listen, the week started fine because Baltimore crushed Cleveland on Thursday night, right? But then look what happened on Sunday. Underdogs, 9 wins. 8 of those dogs went outright. Now, of course, the one that couldn't do it was San Francisco. But listen, with the 49ers, you're just lucky that damn team covers if you happen to bet them as an underdog, right? The favorites that covered, and I got to be generous here with a couple of them, okay? Washington covered against Minnesota. Okay. Philadelphia, strange game. We can almost count it as a push if you want, because the Falcons early Sunday morning up until about 8 o'clock, 8:30 Eastern time at most sports books in the morning were actually a 1 to 1.5 point favorite. Then the line went to pick them, and then Philadelphia took off and was a 1 to 1.5 point favorite. So we could really almost say that wasn't even a favorite cover. That was more a push. And then you had the LA Rams that in some books were pick 'em against the Jets and other books were a -1 favorite. And I'm sorry. If you bet the LA Rams at pick'em or -1 point, you should never bet another game. You should just have your card-carrying gambler membership canceled. No one should be betting any game involving the Rams or the Jets. Just my own personal opinion. But again, the underdogs, 9 covers, 8 of them outright wins. And you know what, guys? It's all cyclical. You can't let what happened this past week affect what happens next week. That's the lesson to be learned. That's the thing that you've got to remember. It's just like all the guys that always say, hey, you got to bet the Monday night dog. Really? Over the last 25 years, what has that gotten you? Basically about a 500 record. That's the reality of betting. People always want to remember the short term, but you can't. You got to have short-term memory deficit, and we move on. Now, this particular video, I always take a look at what happened. So this is going to be your quick tour around week number 10 of your NFL action. Tennessee, 47-25 win at home over Green Bay to even its record at 5-5. Final score really not indicative of how much a big a blowout it was for the Titans. It was 35-10 late in the first half of this game. Titans, though, still just 6-15-1 against the spread. Their last 22 at home, including 2-4 this season. Packers 0-3 as a road chalk this season, 1-2 straight up. Packers 7-12-1 against the spread. Their last 20 regular season games. Marcus Mariota, again, you never know what you get with this guy. This particular week, you got good action. 299 yards, 4 touchdowns as the Titans jumped out to that 21-0 first quarter lead. DeMarco Murray, who, being a longtime Philadelphia Eagles fan, I thought he was washed up, but really it was just Chip Kelly's system last year that really did him in Philadelphia. Another great game, 17 carries, 123 yards, including a 75-yard TD run on the opening play from scrimmage against a Green Bay defense that entered this contest ranked number 1 against the run with a 75.8 yield per game. Of course, they also entered number 1 against the run, giving up just 42-some yards a game when Zeke Elliott ran through them, around them, and over them when the Cowboys beat them up earlier this season at Lambeau. Titans had 5 sacks of Aaron Rodgers, third straight loss for the Packers as they opened up a 3-game road trip. Packers have now lost 4 of their last 5. They visit Washington next week. Meanwhile, Titans visit Indianapolis. Colts, remember, beat them in the middle of a 3-game homestand, a game that the Titans really should have won. Indianapolis, by the way, 8-2 their last 10 over. The Titans 11-2 their last 13 going over, including 7 in a row. Gee, do you think the over might be the play when the Colts and the Titans hook up this week in in Indianapolis? I do think so. Washington 26-20 at home against Minnesota as the Vikings lose their fourth in a row after opening the season 5-0. The Redskins, 14-0 lead early, then found themselves trailing 20-14 at halftime, but they shut out the Vikings in the second half. Sam Bradford, one-man show again because the Vikings can't run the ball. 31 for 40, 307 yards, 2 touchdown passes, but he was sacked 3 times, and the Vikings only 47 yards rushing. Rob Kelly got the start for Washington. Washington benched their former starter, Matt Jones. And Kelly came out of nowhere with 22 carries and 97 yards. Redskins, by the way, 3-1 ATS roll in their last 14 regular season games, and they've gone over in 12 of their last 14 games as well. Tampa Bay, 36-10 upset win against Chicago. Although I don't really know how you can ever say you can upset the Chicago Bears when Jay Cutler is your quarterback. Jay Cutler was Jay Cutler yesterday. Of course, I'm doing this video report for you on Monday, so yesterday was Sunday. But Jay Cutler, 2 interceptions, 2 fumbles, sacked 4 times, does have a hot wife, so we have to put that at least in his good box for a check mark. Defense that gave up 73 points and 1,087 yards and back-to-back losses at home to Oakland, Atlanta, actually held the Bears in check. Bears, 2 for 11 on third downs yesterday, only 283 total yards, also had 9 penalties for 74 yards, but ultimately it was Cutler's 4 turnovers that really led to their downfall. Jameis Winston, nice game, 312 yards, 2 touchdowns. It'll be interesting to see how the Buccaneers do now offensively here as they go to Kansas City next week, because yesterday, for the first time since week number 2 of the season, the number 1 running back, Doug Martin, was back in the lineup. He didn't have a great game yesterday. He had like 16 carries, 33 yards, but again, he was back. And that's what the Bucs need for this offense to get going, to be so potent. Kansas City, by the way, rallied from a 17-3 deficit with 17 points in the fourth quarter for a 20-17 win at Carolina. Special teams and turnovers created all the points. Their offense didn't do anything. Chiefs were 2 for 12 on third downs, only 256 total yards. They had 9 penalties in the game, only possessed the ball for 25 minutes, but they got a 37-yard field goal as time expired, thanks to a Carolina fumble by Kelvin Benjamin. 5th straight win for Kansas City. You know, the Chiefs have won 17 of their last 19 games overall. Panthers host the Saints on Thursday. Kansas City, meanwhile, won the week prior, 19-14 at home against Jacksonville. That game, they were outgained 449 yards to 331, and they went 1 for 14 on third downs, but they benefited from 4 Jacksonville turnovers. So this Kansas City team has been living with a lucky charm in their back pockets here, but can they do it again against Tampa Bay, especially with the Bucs getting healthy on offense? Denver, strangest game. I mean, wacky game. Should have been going to the Saints. Saints should have won for the 5th time in 6 games. They weren't going to cover for a 6th game in a row, as they were a 2.5 to 3-point favorite yesterday. Again, I'm doing this report on Monday. But Denver wins at 25-23 because New Orleans going for the tie-breaking point after attempt. It gets blocked. It gets returned. You saw it. First time in NFL history, one of those point-after attempts blocked and returned for the winning score. Trevor Siemian, nice game, 25 for 40, 258 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions, and he was sacked 6 times. And that's an interesting statistic because, you know, the Saints came into that game with only 11 sacks on the season. They had 6 of Trevor Siemian. Meanwhile, the Broncos moved the ball effectively, 11 for 19 on third down situations. Drew Brees had a nice game against the number 1 pass defense in the league. 21 for 29, 303 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was only sacked 1 time. Drew Brees, for as many times as he's thrown the ball this season, has only been sacked 13 times. Philadelphia, 24-15 home win against Atlanta. The Eagles have lost 4 of their previous 5 games. What makes the Eagles so damn frustrating to handicap their games is they're so unpredictable with their play calling. You know, they've got the rookie quarterback, but more importantly, they got the rookie head coach in Doug Peterson. You don't know how he's going to use his personnel game for game. And listen, I understand that when you're scheming for your a week-to-week basis, you're scheming against your opponent's deficiencies, okay? But you just don't know what he's going to do. And I look at his running back situation, for example. Ryan Matthews is buried on the bench for a couple of weeks, and Darren Sproles is suddenly the number 1 running back. But then yesterday, Matthews gets 19 carries for 109 yards. And the rookie Wendell Smallwood out of West Virginia, who had been buried on the bench, he gets 13 carries for 70 yards. And Darren Sproles goes back to being what he really is best suited to be, an outstanding, dangerous receiver out of the backfield. And the Eagles run for 208 yards compared to 48 for the Falcons. But more importantly, they control the clock. Time of possession, 38 minutes. So suddenly, Falcons team that entered the game as the league's highest scoring team with 33.8 points a game, they're not on the field that much. Philadelphia ran 76 plays. The Falcons only ran 48 in that game. Falcons 2 for 11 on third down conversions. They only had 303 total yards. Eagles had 429 total yards, and they won despite 10 penalties. They won despite 2 missed field goals. They were fortunate, though. The Falcons missed a field goal and missed a point after attempt. And a Falcons team that had been 5-0 against the spread on the road and had gone over in 8 of their previous 9 games this season failed to do either of those successfully. The Rams win 9-6 at New York. The game featured 15 punts. That should have been the over-under play. 15 punts, right? Jets had 296 total yards. The Rams had 280 yards. It was a good game if this was a game in 1927, and the guys were all wearing leather helmets. I can't even talk about this game. Next game, Houston. Oh, my God, the Texans won a game on the road. Big deal. 24-21, they won at Jacksonville as a 3-point underdog. Of course, their previous 3 road games, they lost to New England, Minnesota, and Denver, and those 3 teams are a little better than Jacksonville. Brock Osweiler, another great game on the road, 14 for 27, 99 yards, but he did have 2 touchdown passes. Brock Osweiler's numbers on the road this year, 79 for 151, 610 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions in 4 games. Bad. Baltimore wins, of course, Thursday night, 28-7 over Cleveland. They were at home on Thursday. They trailed 7-6 at halftime. They should be embarrassed, but Joe Flacco got it going. 30 for 41, 296 yards, 3 touchdowns, but also 2 interceptions for the Ravens, who had 396 total yards in the game. Excuse me, I get choked up talking about the Browns, who at 0-10 only had 144 total yards in that game. But they snapped a streak of every game this season. They had allowed at least 30-some points. Hell, they only held Baltimore to 28. And hadn't the Ravens not won a game by more than 7 points since late in the 2014 season? Cody Kessler, the rookie out of USC, was pulled by Hugh Jackson after going 10 for 17 for 94 yards in favor of Josh McCown. But Hugh Jackson said after the game that Cody Kessler is going to be starting Sunday against the Steelers. Well, why didn't you play him the whole game? I don't understand. You're 0-10. What does it mean? Why does it matter? Anyway, Arizona 23-20 home win over San Francisco. Cardinals only, this is what I don't get. Cardinals only ran the ball 23 times for 80 yards against a defense that is ranked number 32 in the league at stopping the run. Again, I'm getting choked up about this. 49ers entered the game, giving up 193 yards a game on the ground. First time they met, Drew Stanton was out, or was playing quarterback because Carson Palmer was out. And they used David Johnson, and he ran for 157 yards. Yesterday, 19 carries for 55 yards. What, did the 49ers suddenly become a great defensive team? Instead, you had Carson Palmer throwing the ball 49 times yesterday. Yes, 376 yards, but 2 interceptions as well. Cardinals, 26-15 advantage in first downs. 443 total yards versus 281 for San Francisco. So why didn't Arizona win this game easily? 4 turnovers, my friend. 8th straight loss for the Niners. Miami, do I know this game well because I had the San Diego Chargers. Phillip Rivers, 4 interceptions. Do I have to tell you anything more about this one? Chargers have gone over in 9 of their last 11 games. Cowboys, this game and the New England game, the best 2 games on Sunday's card, winning 35-30 at Pittsburgh. Now 4-0-1 against the spread as an underdog this season, 8-0-1 against the spread overall. Pittsburgh has lost 4 in a row. Fell to 10-4-1 against the spread their last 15 regular season home games. They had been 3-0 straight up in ATS with Ben Roethlisberger starting at Heinz Field this season. Steelers, of course, they went up 30-29 with 42 seconds to play, but then Dak Prescott completed 3 of 4 passes on the next drive, which resulted in Zeke Elliott eventually going up pretty much untouched for 32 yards for the touchdown to win the game with 9 seconds to play. Elliott, 21 carries, 114 yards. Prescott, 22 for 32, 319 yards and 2 touchdowns. Final 2 drives in that game. He went 9 for 10 for 76 yards. And please, is this going to silence the Tony Romo return talk once and for all? He won at Lambeau. He rallied the Cowboys from 14-0 down in the first quarter at San Francisco. He rallied them from 10 down in the second half to win in overtime at home against Philadelphia. And he rallies them twice to win at Pittsburgh. What more do you have to do as a rookie to earn the damn job over a guy who's so brittle and last played in a regular season game, last Thanksgiving? I mean, Ben Roethlisberger was great yesterday. 37 for 46, 408 yards, 3 touchdowns. 191 yards passing in the fourth quarter alone. Antonio Brown was great. 14 catches, 154 yards. But the Steelers, still no defense. Cowboys won despite 10 penalties. Interesting here. Steelers gambling frequently yesterday. 0 for 3 on 2-point conversions. If you had the Steelers yesterday, if they had hung on to win that game, you wouldn't have covered because those 3 failures on 2-point conversion tries would have bit you in the ass. Cowboys, of course, host Baltimore next. And then, of course, the Sunday night game. Seattle winning at New England. Russell Wilson, 348 yards, 3 touchdowns. Seahawks scoring on 7 of 9 possessions in that contest. The Seattle offense, 420 yards, 23 first downs. But what a difference with a ground game for the Seahawks. What a difference it made for them as they constantly kept the Patriots off balance in that one. So that'll do it, guys. And obviously, I'm doing this video report on Monday. So we're not going to talk about the Giants-Bengals game, but you'll just have to live with that. Good luck, everybody, this weekend when it comes to gambling. Hope you all make some money.